Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. The show will be wrapping up Season 3 at the end of February. It will return for Season 4 in May. You can definitely use this time to catch up on any episodes you may have missed. I would also really love to hear anything that you would like to have on the show during Season 4. I always appreciate your feedback, so please feel free to email me at sarah@journeyforjasmine.com, or you can always reach out to me on any of my social media at journeyforjasmine. Today I am talking with Ashleigh. She is 23 years old and has battled multiple chronic illnesses. She was first put on birth control at age 11. And due to genetic conditions, she was told that she had a 5 to 10% chance of IVF working. She ultimately made the decision to have a hysterectomy. In this episode, she discusses dealing with her chronic illnesses and the grief that comes with not being able to carry a baby. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Ashleigh. Ashleigh, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, so my name is Ashley. I am 23 years old. I live outside of Chicago. I'm a recent college graduate with my major in zoology, so all things animals, animal behavior, animal science, all that fun stuff. I currently work as an educator at a zoo in the Chicagoland area, as well as hopefully someday going back to marine mammal. Marine mammal is like my true passion, and I absolutely love it. Outside of work, I do podcasting for a Philadelphia sports podcast, 302 Birds, based out of Delaware. I was born and raised a huge Eagles fan, and that has continued into my adult life. I also spend a lot of time with my family. Most of my family is here in the Chicagoland area, as well as my fiance.
Wow, you sound so busy.
I am always busy. There's never a dull moment for sure.
But your job sounds amazing. I've always thought it would be so cool to work with animals. Science was not my thing.
I definitely understand it. There are some sciences where I'm good with biology, but please don't ask me anything chemistry or anything like that. That's
Right. You're
not
like,
my
I
thing.
have this side, but please, not that.
Exactly. Yes. Ask me anything about biology. I got you.
Do you have like a favorite animal to work with or just a favorite animal in general?
Yeah, my favorite animal to work with is definitely sea lions. I love the fact that you can do so much with them both in water and on land, and they are just basically giant, like 400 to 600 pound toddlers. They're like a mix of like a toddler and a golden retriever, and it's like the best thing ever.
I love that so much. And they're adorable.
They are. They're perfect.
So, do you mind sharing a little more about your story?
Yeah, so I started my period when I was 10 years old. I had just turned 10, which is pretty young. I have a genetic bone disorder that causes basically benign bone tumors to grow all over my body. And that I would have about a surgery a year for most of my school years. And most of them were pretty minor, just kind of taking off something. And I would typically feel better afterwards. And I had a pretty major surgery complication back in 2014 that caused significant nerve damage to my leg. At that point, we were just kind of like, well, we'll keep doing it. I got myself rehabbed to the point where I was walking unassisted most days, which was awesome. And I was always struggling with like crazy bleeding that no one could understand and ovarian cysts from the time I was like 11 on, which is obviously pretty young for something like that to be happening. We had always known that the journey for me to become pregnant and to have a healthy baby would be eventful. Throughout this about 10-year period, I was on so many different birth controls, trying so many different things. And it just got to a point where I was hemorrhaging and bleeding in the wrong places about every 7 to 10 days. And it just was not the quality of life that I needed. So I had to decide how I wanted to move forward. And for me, that was the impossible decision of having a hysterectomy at the age of 22. I had my hysterectomy just about 4 months ago, back in October, and just kind of the journey of being in at the time a pretty new relationship and just kind of figuring out what our story was going to be, as well as finding doctors who would listen and who would agree that it was the right decision.
Wow,
So
yeah, that is so much that you've been through already.
yeah,
It's
for
kind of
sure.
hard to know what to even say. It's one of those things that I'm sure is it rare, a rare thing you said?
Yeah, so the genetic condition now, when I was born, it affected about 1 in 50,000. Now that a lot of the people with it that were born around the same time I was are choosing to not have children, it's dropped down to about 1 in 75,000. And that's from anywhere from a couple of random tumors on their body to not being able to walk at all. Like there's a huge spectrum of that disorder.
So have you been able to meet other people that have the same disorder?
Yeah, so there is some amazing Facebook groups for parents, and then that has kind of evolved into now that some of us are of an age starting around the time when I was in high school, a lot of us started reaching out together. So that's been a great kind of sense of community. There's a couple of them that I talk to fairly regularly just about how everybody's doing. And again, it's amazing how different the disease affects different people. So for like instance, my dad has it pretty minorly. His dad had it even less major than any of us. And then both of my brothers also have it. So my parents hit the genetic lottery in terms of having three kids that all have it.
Ugh. So it's something that can affect both men and women.
Yeah, it actually typically is worse in men. That just has not necessarily been my family story. But again, everybody is different. And my brothers have had lots of surgeries as well.
So when it comes to like having children, is it dependent upon the severity of, or is it
Yeah,
more about, I guess what I'm trying to ask is it more dangerous to carry a pregnancy, hard to get pregnant, or is it about not passing on the disorder, if that makes sense?
all of the above. So it really depends on where the tumors are located in terms of carrying a pregnancy. So I do have some tumors in my pelvis that they said, we would very much have to watch those in order to see if it would obstruct a growing baby. As well as for most people, a lot of people are able to get pregnant, as well as some can stay pregnant, but really you have anywhere from like a 50 to an 85% chance of passing it on to the next generation. And it gets progressively worse with each generation. So that's always something that we have to be keeping in mind as well, just kind of based off of how significantly the parent has it, is that cards that you're willing to play.
Right. Yeah. That has to be, an added layer of grief right there.
Yes, and that's a grief process that started, long before most of this stuff did. And there is, the chance that they're starting to figure out if they can test for it in embryos, but it is difficult because most of the time children don't show symptoms until about between the ages of 2 and 4. So it is very difficult to, unless you're testing for one specific gene that they don't even know for sure which gene causes it, that can definitely kind of impact things. And there's just not a whole lot of research being done on the disease at this point.
Yeah, yeah. See, that was going to be my next question is is if it could be tested, like if you go through IVF or something like that. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it
they
kind
said
of
that they would
sounds.
try their best. That's what they told me. They said, we would try our best, but ultimately it's not a disease that most people hear about. One of the fertility clinics that I went to, she had never heard of it. And she was one of the best fertility specialists in the state of Illinois. So, yeah,
Don't you love just being part of the rare
the
genetic
rare
club?
crew. Yeah, it's a club that I wish for no one to be a part of, but there's some really great relationships that are formed from it.
Yeah, definitely. Our daughter, she was stillborn at 32 weeks, and she had a rare condition as well. She had, well, kind of two rare conditions. She had mosaic trisomy 15, and she had
Okay.
congenital diaphragmatic hernia. And the mosaic trisomy 15, they said it was like less than 100 cases worldwide. It
Oh,
was like
wow.
crazy. And I'm like, and so the next pregnancy, they said, okay, you have less than a 1% chance of it happening again because it was just a fluke.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, but I've been in the 1%. So now you're just basically telling me like it's guaranteed to happen again.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
has it changed your view on like statistics or things like that?
Definitely. I think, especially being as young as I am, dealing with these conditions and having multiple doctors, tell me that it wasn't that I was basically making up everything in my head and that my symptoms were not true. And then, I would have test results come back and they're like, oh, this actually does make sense. This is what you have. And I said, so sometimes you have to, even if it's a 2% chance of something happening, there to my knowledge, is not anybody that has had the combination of health things that I have had. So as many times as people are like, this is, impossible. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at what does impossible truly mean. And, let's take a deeper look into this.
And it's so frustrating too that, I think especially as women that we aren't listened to so many times by our doctors when we're saying, I know something's wrong. And they're just, oh, it's in your head, or that's just something you deal with, or, things like that. Did you experience any of that?
Oh, 100%. There's so much medical gaslighting. It took me 8 surgeons to find a surgeon who was willing to do a hysterectomy. And I live outside of Chicago, so there's a lot of really phenomenal doctors. And they would take one look at my age and just say no. And my last surgeon, I went into that appointment. He's the one that did the hysterectomy, and I was kind of expecting to have to fight for it. So I just kind of walked through my medical history, and he said, okay, in a perfect world, what would you like to have done? And I said, well, in a perfect world, we would have figured this out, and this would not be a part of my story, or it would not be as large of a story. And I said, but given the fact that we've waited this out, we've tried literally everything, I think my best option would be a hysterectomy. And he looked at me and he goes, okay, that sounds reasonable. And that was it.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm like, you listened to me. So in my post-op appointment, I was in tears because I felt better. And he's like, and I said, thank you for listening to me. And he's like, I've given you this next chance, so you have to do something with it. And I'm like, you better believe that I will.
I love that he listened to you though. I mean, it's just sometimes that's just the most important thing is somebody to just hear you and see you.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
So was that also another, grieving period that you went through having to have the hysterectomy?
Yeah, the grieving process started. It was definitely a challenge starting around the time that I made the appointment. They actually required that I was in counseling, which was, I think that's a great thing to require. So I was going twice a week to counseling, just kind of working through things along with just kind of constant conversations with my fiance and I. And then after that surgery happened, we had a time period of a couple of weeks where I was pretty much in bed. And then the first couple of weeks, I really didn't feel anything emotionally. Like I was coming off of my hormones, but I was mostly focusing on healing. And 13 days after my surgery, we unexpectedly welcomed my niece at 29 weeks. So that was a whole other kind of loophole into all of this where I was really just beginning my grieving process. And then here is this completely helpless newborn who is not supposed to be here yet. Baby is now doing well and home, but at the time it felt like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. There was so many emotions that I would never, just feelings of jealousy that I've never felt before, and just a lot of feeling like I would do anything to be able to carry that baby, but then at the same time being like, I also so want this baby to be okay. I love her so much. And we weren't able to meet her the entire time she was in the NICU due to RSV. So she was in the NICU for about 70 days and then came home, and then we finally met her. So it was like you kind of ripped off that band-aid, and you also like reopened that wound and poured salt in it too,
Yeah.
of meeting this newborn. I mean, she was 2.5 months old, but she was the size of a newborn. She had just turned 6 pounds when she came home. So the grieving process, I definitely, every day is still very different. I am of the age, I went to a Christian college, so there's a lot of people who I went to school with who are getting married and having kids. So that has been a unique thing to kind of navigate. My fiance has had a lot of the same opinions and feelings too. So making sure that we're both supporting each other, knowing that we plan to adopt one day, that like the right baby will come to us in the right birth family. But we have to be patient and we have to make sure that we are healing ourselves as well.
I think, even though you've been through so much, you still have such, and I know that this took a lot of like work because it doesn't come overnight, but you seem to be looking more positively towards the future.
Yeah, 100%. And I think again, every day is very different, but I feeling so much better after my hysterectomy has definitely helped. I think if I was not feeling better, I would be questioning whether I made the right decision. But objectively, I have energy like I have not had before. Part of it also is that you're not bleeding anymore. So my iron levels are normal for the first time in several years, but and things like that. But all of that has kind of helped me to realize like I definitely made the right decision, and there's going to be lifelong things that are changed because of it. However, our story, even though it's going to be different than what we imagined, it's still going to be our story, and it will be beautiful in our own way.
And I think it's just a perfect example that, not all families are made the same way.
Exactly.
And I think that it's great that, you do want to adopt one day and still have your child and, still be a family. You haven't, given up on that dream, even though
Yeah,
I know it, you have to grieve the not being able to carry the child part, but it doesn't mean that you can never have children.
exactly. Yes, for sure.
Did you ever receive any insensitive comments regarding your situation?
Yes, specifically within some friends groups, they're asking, well, are you guys at least going to try? Are you sure that this is the right decision? Do you know that this is a permanent decision? And, to those people, it was like, this is the right decision. This is not a decision that you wake up one day and say, I'm going to have this done. It's a decision that takes months, if not years, to kind of contemplate and figure out if you're really doing the right thing. I think most of the people who kind of doubted what we did, they see me now and they're like, oh, she looks like she feels so much better. Or we see her more now because she's not home. Things like that. Quite a few on like social media on TikTok, people asking, like, are you sure that you're making the right decision? And again, it's hard because it may not, it's not the right decision for everyone, but it was the right decision for me. And it took me some time to realize that it was the right decision. I think there's always going to be some regret right afterwards, but again, to like yesterday and today, I was out of the house like all day after working my full work week, and that would not have been possible before this.
So really, it was more just about quality of life. I mean, it's more
Yeah,
than just about having and carrying a pregnancy. It's about your life.
yeah. And I don't think I would have been able to be a good mom if I was dealing with all of the health issues that I was at that point.
Have you ever received comments like about your age and being young and things like that? Because I know, a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
people don't think that younger people have issues.
Oh, 100%. That mostly came from when I was with other doctors. I was told that no one's ever going to do anything because I'm 22. At the time, I was, yeah, between 21 and 22 when I started this process, as well as like, you're going to regret this someday. And questions of, are you sure that your fiance is okay with this? Does he actually know what this means? People then saying that, I would have to get his approval. And I'm like, he wants whatever's best for me because he was more on board with this than I was because he's seen how sick I am. So definitely, or in like some of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, there's, young women that will be like, is this too early? And everybody will say yes. And then that's when I will anonymously comment and just be like, hey, this is my story. If you would like me to message you, I'm happy to. But just do not let your age define what you are worth for your medical procedures and for your medications. It's not worth it.
People are so quick to judge like situations they don't understand.
Truly, yeah, it blows my mind every day.
I'm like, you never really know what you would do or think until you are like put in that position.
Yeah, 100%.
Are there any particular things you found that helped you with your grief?
I do a lot of meditation and journaling, as well as trying to find some people who agree with the decisions that you're making and are willing to just be that listening ear, preferably people that aren't like in your immediate family, because it's a grieving process for everybody involved. And I think that's something that often gets overlooked. So having some of my best friends that I can just be like, hey, I need to chat, as well as limiting who I follow on social media has been a big thing. Trying to limit what I was seeing, especially in those early stages of grief in terms of pregnancy and things like that, so that I was not kind of being totally bombarded by it at all hours of the day.
Oh, that part is so hard. I swear it's like it follows you around, like all the
It really
ads, all
does.
the announcements, everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, can I please just see something else?
Yes, anything else. Like give me anything else.
Like, I know this is like the time I need to see all the cute animals.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Did you find that? I mean, I know it sounds like your fiance is very supportive of you in your situation. Do you think that going through this affected your relationship at all? Like either bringing you closer or,
Yeah,
anything
it,
like
it
that?
definitely brought us closer because even by the time that we met, I knew that it would be pretty difficult for us to have a full term pregnancy at that point We weren't completely writing it off. So I was very honest with him from that standpoint of like, if this is an issue for you, that's totally okay. But I would not want you to start dating me if we're not honest about this. And he has kind of seen again the shift of me before my surgery where I was so sick to now when again I have days where I don't feel as good, but in general I'm on the up and up. So he's seen that, and as well as like when you go through as much as we've been through, and he's about a year older than I am, but still at 24 and 23, some of the stuff that we've had to deal with is kind of crazy. It's definitely made us stronger, and I don't think if we weren't meant to be together, we would have made it far at all.
Yeah. Well, I love that I mean, you sound like you have a really great relationship.
I am very blessed. He's amazing.
I forgot to ask earlier, do you have any pets at home?
I do. I have a couple of reptiles and then a saltwater fish tank. So next up is to get a dog. We had my family dog of like 16 years passed away last March, and we have not gotten a new one yet. So we are hoping that probably around the time of the wedding, we'll get a puppy and start that journey together as well. So raise a furry child before we're ready to start the adoption process.
Yeah, I was just curious since study animals if you
Yeah.
actually had any, but it sounds like you have some of the more, I mean, I guess I wouldn't call them non-traditional, but not dogs or
Well,
cats, like with the
not dogs and
reptiles.
cats.
Yeah.
No, with the reptiles that's where I started my career was with reptiles. So they're kind of forever just going to be a part of us.
So do you have any advice for people who are going through a similar situation?
Yeah, I would just say don't give up looking for answers. However, if you get to a point where looking for answers is too exhausting and you're ready to make that drastic change, don't take no for an answer. Just you will eventually find someone. There are some really awesome Reddit subreddits that have given me lots of resources to either doctors or different other financial resources that can help. That would be my biggest piece of advice is just don't take no for an answer and keep searching because there is somebody eventually that will listen.
I know that you said that this is pretty rare, but are there doctors that specialize in it?
So, not particularly in the bone condition. There's a lot of orthopedic oncologists that do a lot of research with it and have worked with them. So, I worked with a surgeon out of the University of Chicago for the longest time. He saw both my brothers and myself for probably 15 years, and he's now in Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. There's some really good doctors out there, but there's also a lot that don't know. In terms of like finding an adult orthopedic specialist, I have not found a good one of which just outright did not look at my chart and came in and diagnosed me with osteosarcoma, which without even looking at anything. And I was like, dude, you have to understand, like, that's a normal tumor for me. Like, I understand it does not look normal for most people. I'm like, but that tumor has not changed in 6 or 7 years. I'm like, I can guarantee you it's not osteosarcoma. So just finding the right surgeon in pediatrics because most people need the most help in pediatrics. There are quite a few that will see children with it, but once you get to adults, they really have no idea.
That's really frustrating too. I mean, I get it. Like doctors can't know everything about everything, but read the chart. Like how
Read the
hard is
chart.
that?
Yes, I did have one instance at my OB's office right after my surgery that I went in for a follow up. I had some complications after my hysterectomy, and she clearly did not look at my chart because she sits me in the office, and the first thing she said is, "When was the date of your last period, and is there any chance you could be pregnant?" And
I
I
don't think so.
I looked at her, and my patience was not. I was not feeling good that day, so. I reacted very differently than I normally would. And I said, if you were to look at my chart, you would see that I'm here for complications of a hysterectomy. So I apologize, but I don't think either of those are relevant. And she walked out and a new nurse came in. So I
It's
was
not
like,
funny, but it's just
no,
like
exactly, right? Like I'm like, oh my gosh, like read the dang chart, people.
and I feel like so many of us have been in that situation where like we've been asked an uncomfortable question because people just don't read it and don't pay attention. And then it's like, could you
Yeah,
just like not put us in that position, please? Because then it feels like we have to be the quote bad guy by correcting them.
yes,
But
which is
it's just awkward all around.
yes, 100%.
Did you find you said you had some like groups that you joined? Did
Yeah,
you
so I did join like a hysterectomy Facebook group as well as some of the Reddit channels. were really great for finding people. And most of them are for more like tubal ligations and things. But those people who are likely to do tubal ligations on young people are more likely to do hysterectomies as well. So just calling around and seeing what people are willing to do.
And I feel like that's like the best way to find, resources and things is other people who are going through it or going through something similar. Because I feel like you don't get the good referrals from doctors and you don't get the good information that you need.
No, I mean, I will say my pelvic floor physical therapist is a total godsend. And she recommended a couple of people who did not work. And she's like, okay, I will not recommend anybody to them if they're having similar issues. And she was the one that really helped me both get ready for the surgery and then post op getting strength back and stuff like that. So she was a total godsend.
I love that you had at least one amazing doctor.
Yes, for sure. She's amazing.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share or add?
I don't think so. I just really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today.
Well, and I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to follow me on either Instagram or TikTok, it is Ashinator01. I can email it to you as well so that you have it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'd be happy to share that.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashleigh, for sharing your story with us. I think this is such a great time to point out, again, that no matter what someone's age, gender, or social status, we just never know what others are going through. Infertility and loss can and do affect all different types of people. We truly never know what we would do or how we would respond to a situation until we are put in that exact same situation. So let's try not to judge others and always be kind. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.